All right, we are probably on the draw. We're on the draw. It is confirmed. We're playing Rogue Delver, of course. This hand doesn't look great. Our opponent mulliganed. We're going to join him. 4 lands, some cards that may or may not end up being lands. Doesn't look particularly good. This hand also not that fantastic, but I do think it's going to be better than our average 5. If the opponent... Serum Visions on top actually looks quite appealing. If our opponent's on an aggro deck that is bad to bolt effects, awesome. If they're not, oh boy, are we in trouble with these 3 dead cards in our hand. Serum Visions on top, very nice, because it means we can look for threats, and if Visions is bad, usually bolt effects are good. If you don't have time to cantrip, that generally means your opponent's trying to kill you very quickly. We're going to throw this Visions on top, bottom the island. Don't really need the 4th land just yet. Maybe someday. Today's not that day. The second Visions looks pretty good. Is this a bolt at our face? Oh, it's Living End. I was really hoping this would be an old version of Burn that's still running Copperline Gorge. Against Living End... This hand looks dreadful. Let's go get a breeding pool before we use this Visions. Oh boy. So for those of you who don't know Living End, actually this Stubborn Denial could be really good. If we get this Mandrills into play, it's going to be fantastic. If we don't get the Mandrills into play, well, geez. But if we do, nice. So Living End is a deck that plans to cycle a bunch of creatures for 1/0 mana sometimes, churn through its deck a little bit, hit land drops, find its combo. It's going to cast a 3 mana Cascade spell, sometimes with the assistance of Simian Spirit Guide to do it on turn 2. That's going to find Living End because no other cards in the deck cost fewer than 3. Archfiend of Ifnir is a new addition from Amonkhet? No, that's Amonkhet? I have no idea. It's one of the two. They're cycling more stuff. So they're putting a bunch of stuff in their bin. They're gonna cascade into a Living End, at which point we're going to be very sad. And that's just about the gist of it. So we can scour ourselves. No, scouring the opponent is so bad. Okay, so I think we're going to play Flooded Strand, give us the option of, everything's bad. Everything we do is bad. In order to get Mandrills into play this turn, we have to scour, or we fetch off of the Flooded Strand, but that means the Stubborn Denial on top of our deck is gone. I think we do want to get the Mandrills into play. I don't want to scour them. That's our other option. We scour the opponent. That still requires us to fetch, but then we get to draw the Denial. So we scour them with the Steam Vents. We draw Stubborn Denial. We pray to God that they cannot combo off through the Denial or before we get it. And that's about it. Milling the opponent really bad when they're actively trying to put stuff into their graveyard to reanimate. It might be our best option. It feels really bad. We either mill them or we mill ourselves to get this Mandrills into play. I do think we want the Mandrills down as quickly as possible, because waiting an extra turn to have Mandrills and or Denial seems kind of worse than milling the opponent. Milling the opponent just seems so awful, though, to me. Okay, so what could happen? We mill the opponent, they turn over some creatures, we fetch, they go for Living End, and we get completely wrecked. The other thing that could happen is we mill the opponent, maybe they turn over some creatures, we fetch, they don't have it yet. So in order for milling the opponent to be good, we have to hope they don't have access to Living End yet. which seems not that likely. I think we're best off waiting a turn. The thing I kind of like about waiting a turn is if they do go for the living end, we have a Hail Mary in crack the fetch, shuffle the denial back into the deck, thought scour ourselves, and hope to turn over a couple of creatures. Okay? So yeah, they're gonna put a bunch of stuff into their graveyard. Horror of the Broken Lands, another edition. I'm 90% sure that's Amonkhet. That's definitely Amonkhet. Hour of Devastation is Bolus Horns. We got there. This is good because we're going to draw the Stubborn Denial. Something we very much want. We don't really need 3 red sources. I think I'm just going to grab a basic island here. Scour myself. Another Mandrills, okay. If we were going to draw a second Denial, I would happily shock here. A second Mandrills makes me a lot less interested. Let's delve. Thought Scour can go. One more card, land or sorcery. I think we're pretty covered for card types here, and also fairly unlikely to actually care about the likes of Goyf and Traverse right now. So we're going to hold up Stubborn Denial. That's good. That's very good. Now we basically have to really hope they never get to resolve a living end, because they have a lot of stuff in this graveyard. It's packed. They're also going to mess with our library. Most likely, no, that's when it enters. Architects of Will, very cool, because you get to mess with the opponent's top of their deck once it gets into play off of living end. It's really important that this denial is ferocious at this point of the game. So, here's the Cascade. Cascade spell, I should say. Here's the Cascade trigger. We let that resolve. Make sure you do not try to counter this. Demonic Dread going to make it so that Mandrills cannot block eventually. We're going to counter the Living End. What Living End would do is basically, effectively, it would destroy all creatures on the battlefield and then reanimate all creatures that were in graveyards when it first started resolving. It does that by first exiling the graveyard, then dealing with the battlefield, then bringing the exiled cards back. So we dealt with the first one. We have some stuff. We're going to get in here for 4. And how many points of burn do we have in our hand? Because that's going to end up being relevant. The opponent's at 11. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. That's interesting. I kind of want to shock here, play second Mandrills. Maybe we don't. We hope that if they have the second Living End, we can Mandrills through it. But at the same time, there's no way Mandrills is doing anything decent in that scenario. Green, 1, let's use some of this. This unfortunately means that the opponent knows we don't have a Snapcaster Mage, which would have been fantastic. Snap Denial, sealing the game. As is, we're going to hope they don't have it for another turn. Cyclers make Living End pretty redundant. It's basically a 2-card combo in Cascade plus bunch of stuff in your graveyard. Oh, they're going at it. There's no way they're not with that. Beast Within. Never mind, they're not. Well, I mean, I'm just going to bolt your face. Yeah, I can't imagine bolting face being bad here. They're going to take it. They're doing this now because they want to make sure a Living End resolves. They're taking out our only blue source here. Giving us the 3/3 is really bad if they're not going to send it to the graveyard right away. I'm going to get this bolt out of our hand. I have a very strong feeling that bad things are going to happen to us imminently. We have a 3/3. We're not going to have it for long. If we tapped this land for blue, they'd probably just go to second main phase and try to go off. Makes a lot of sense to me. Here's Violent Outburst, the other Cascader they typically run. Second Living End, and you'll notice our stuff's gone, their stuff is back. They're also going to mess with the top of our deck and the top of theirs a little bit. Make sure we don't draw any outs. Looks like game 1 is going to be kaput very, very soon. Not a lot happens on our side when the opponent has this kind of board. How much power do they have? Let's get the stack out of the way here. 4, 7, 12, 16, 21, 25, and 6. 31 power, that's okay. We can dismember something. I wouldn't even show them that we ever had dismember in the deck to begin with. I don't think we're boarding out the dismember. We might. We're just super duper dead. We're going to go to them. Unfortunately for us, the opponent had the second cascade spell. And that'll do. Alright, let's head over to game 2. Let's see what we can do here. This isn't a matchup I'm specifically prepared for. I have an idea. Oh, by the way, this isn't the deck I've been running recently. Or is it? Yes, it is. Young Pyromancer in the board. That's where it was. I knew I put Peasy in. I wasn't sure where it was. So, a couple changes. The main board's intact. That's what threw me off, because I thought I put Peasy in the main board for a second, and then I didn't see it, and I was very confused, because it would be right here in front of Goyf in the 2-drop section, because MTGO does not let you sort by lands, cantrips, burn spells, counter spells, threats, which is something that I quite like to do. Unfortunately, it's not something that I'm allowed to do. So, Young Pyromancer in the board here over Bedlam Reveler. I don't really like Reveler right now. Maybe if there were more mid-range decks, I'd like it more. There's really not much to say. I mean, a lot of control decks board in Graveyard Hate, which is really annoying when you're trying to resolve a Reveler. Sometimes that's fine. Usually it's not, but fairly often if they have the Graveyard Hate, we can play around it. And we're only running the one Reveler anyways, but it's still very annoying. Young Pyromancer, pretty good against the same mid-range and control decks you're running Reveler against. Obviously, it's not as good because, well, it's not as good when Reveler is good. When Reveler resolves, it's probably the best card in the deck. It's just resolving Reveler often is a little bit difficult. Young Pyromancer, a lot easier to resolve. Makes a lot of 1/1s that can overload the opponent's removal. It's also nice against combo decks, such as the one we're about to play against. I think it's going to replace Nux here. Nux probably a little slow against Living End, considering they just throw it in the graveyard after. The other card I changed is 1 Pyroclasm became a Kozilek's Return. Something I kind of like, I think. What do we want here? Is Blood Moon good against them? Wow, we're sideboarding light. I'm thinking something like that. Maybe board out Vapor Snag. Shoal can at least counter Living End when we have mana up. I actually boarded out too much stuff. Maybe a Blood Moon? I don't know what I'm doing. I very clearly don't know what I'm doing. Let's take out Forked Bolt for a second Blood Moon. That could be good. They could always beast within a Blood Moon, but still, I think that's fine. Kozilek's Return, I think, is pretty good in most of the matchups that I like Pyroclasm in. It's a little bit better in some, obviously a little worse in others. The 3rd mana is the main drawback to it. This hand is a very clear mulligan. The thing Kozilek's Return has going for it, though, it's an instant, which is nice. We're going to bottom that card that we're not casting for a while. Not that it really matters, since as long as that's not a land, we're casting Visions. Kozilek's Return is colorless. That's very relevant against Etched Champion. You can Kozilek's Return an Etched Champion, which is something I like a lot. I kind of want both of these lands, most likely with Misty underneath the Stomping Ground so that we can Goyf cleanly enough. That seems pretty decent. Do I actually want the 3rd land here? What are we playing towards with it? Not a lot, I don't think. Maybe we just take one of these? Let's take both. We can always scour if we really feel that's necessary. Go to the opponent. So yeah, Kozilek's Return. One of the things I like least about it is it's probably a little slow against Affinity. Affinity, a blisteringly fast deck, as we know, and I've tried Izzet Staticaster against them, and honestly I don't like it very much just because of how fast they are and how sometimes we just don't hit 3 mana on time. So that's definitely a thing with Kozilek's Return. On the other hand, Kozilek's Return being an instant means it can hit manlands when the opponent's clocking you with them, which is something I like very much against Affinity. Taking out some Nexi, very good. Taking out their board when they're trying to sack Ravager to buff something, very nice. All things I'm interested in, so I think it's going to be good enough. The instant speed combined with the colorlessness, I think nice against Affinity. We're going to start clocking the opponent. Another deck that Kozilek's Return has some drawbacks against is Elves. Elves is pretty fast. I think I like 2 mana sweepers much more there, but it's also good against Collected Company, in that if they Coco on your end step, you just Kozilek's Return right after it resolves, which sounds fantastic. You can also Kozilek's Return in response to Azuri activations, which seems very interesting. If they only have enough mana for 1 overrun, you can get them with that. Not sure if we're going to Thought Scour here. If they have Violent Outburst, it's an instant, which means they can go for Living End on our turn, or while we've tapped... Yeah, I'm not going to crack that yet. You know what? We probably should. If we don't crack it now, we're basically not cracking it ever, because the main reason to not crack it is we don't have double blue up if they try to go off in response. This isn't particularly good. We are going to swing. Goyf's a 5/6. That's nice. 6 points of burn in hand. That's nice. The opponent doesn't have too many things in their graveyard right now, so that's not too bad, but they do have 3 mana up, which means they're probably going to have at least 3, more reasonably 4 things in their graveyard by the time they untap. Makes me feel like maybe playing Mandrills is the best we're going to get here. See, Living End isn't like most other board wipes where you don't want to play into the board wipe, because Living End also usually produces something like 15 to 20 power after it wipes your board. So you can't really play around it by not playing out your threats, because sooner or later they're going to have 20 power. 20 is a lot of power. So I kind of like just running our threats out and saying, you know what, if you have it, you have it. We're not winning when you have it, so we may as well win the games where you don't have it. Creature, land in the graveyard, sorcery, artifact, instant for us. I'm trying to figure out how we're casting Mandrills here, because I do want to play it. I also probably want to hold up these lightning bolts. I like the idea of putting the opponent to 3, making a top-decked bolt lethal, or a top-decked Snapcaster Mage. Or, you know what, maybe we don't play Mandrills to keep Traverse online, because that's a live top deck as well. I'm going to play this Mountain and pass. Those are my thoughts on the matter. They're going to cycle. They're going to put a -1/-1 counter. No, it's while it's on the battlefield that ability works. Never mind. Goyf is intact. Beautifully intact. I love having 5/6s. It's basically my favorite hobby at this point. I think we unleash at least 1 lightning bolt. Don't know if we go for the second. I like the first a lot. I don't want to be caught with too many bolts in hand if they have a beast within. Well, they didn't go for it there, so we probably just do this. The opponent not really being proactive with the bolts on the stack, so I think we may as well get the second one out of our hand. Let them know that they're dead to a top-decked bolt. force them to have a way to deal with Tarmogoyf. We've got a couple of turns if there's a living end here. Well, here we go. They're going to have 5. Okay, well, those two don't fly, so that's good. That's very good. If we had a Thought Scour in hand, I'd be scouring us, trying to get creatures into the graveyard right now. Anything else relevant with this living end on the stack? If we had a counter, obviously, I'd go for that. The opponent also is playing Ricochet Trap with almost complete certainty, given that it's really good in these decks. You get to redirect the counter spell to something that isn't living end. What do we got? Tarmogoyf, that's actually really good. Slows down their clock by a lot. I believe we also play out the Mandrills, hopefully in such a way that Traverse and Snapcaster Mage are both extremely live. We're going to delve one of these. Now, we actually might not want to delve the Lightning Bolts. I'm going to pull up Fairy Macabre real quick, because that is some pseudo graveyard hate that the deck tends to run. You discard it to exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards. That's its non-creature mode. They can play it main deck because it allows them to discard to living end. Basically, it doesn't, instead of drawing a card, it exiles some stuff. We can't stop them from exiling both bolts though, so I think that's perfectly fine. Thought Scour can go. One more, we might just tap this island. Sorcery, land, artifact. Delirium's online. Delirium's only relevant if Bolt is there. So I think delving a little more is fine. We'll just pretend we have a counterspell in hand. Goyf has a 4/5 I'm totally okay with, because it still eats tons of stuff. Top decking that Tarmogoyf was really nice. The opponent at 2 now, they gave us an extra live draw in Tarfire. Oh, that's going to shrink Goyf. And it also grew Goyf by putting a creature in the bin. So that's not bad. Oh, okay, that's temporary. That's temporary. That's good. That's very good. Oh, it's each? Oh, geez. That's a deal breaker. They have a lot of cycling cards. Our board is about to shrink. Okay. So we probably have exactly 1 turn to draw the lethal burn spell that we're hoping for. That's a little rough. Oh, they're going to make it so our stuff can't block. No, target creature. Okay, okay. Offensive Demonic Dread. That's pretty neat. Second living end. This one's probably just going to be left in exile. Yep, they chose not to cast it. 29 revealed cards. Do we go through these? Probably if we have another game. Simian Spirit Guide exiled. Okay, so we're taking almost lethal? They have to have lethal if they're doing this, right? 5 plus 8 is 13. Is my math wrong? They made it so both of our dudes can't block. Do they have a Street Wraith? They can't have a Street Wraith. That attacks. Why did they use both Demonic Dreads? Okay, they just wanted to get in for 4. Alright. That's fair, I guess. Holding this back so they don't die on the crackback. We top decked a Delver of Secrets, which we're definitely playing out. Attacking looks pretty bad here, but at the same time, we force them to block Tarmogoyf, which looks pretty good here. They can always discard Fairy Macabre. If they have that, we're in trouble. If they don't have Fairy Macabre in hand, how do you pronounce that word? Macabre or Macabre? I think it's Macabre, right? If we swing with Goyf here, they have to either trade with the Archfiend or they give up the Horror. Now, if they have Fairy Macabre specifically, they don't have mana to cycle, and the only 0 mana cycler they have is Street Wraith. I imagine they have a Fairy Macabre in their deck. Let's see if we've seen it. Do we have confirmation? Fairy Macabre. That word. That's Macabre, correct? I think. I might just swing with the Goyf here. I kind of want to swing with Goyf. If they have something to discard, we lose Goyf. If they don't have something to discard, cool. They either trade with this, which is fantastic because that has flying, or they chump with this. One of the two. We're going to find out. They have to block. If they don't block, they're dead. Well, they blocked there. Do you have it? They didn't have it. Dope. Alright. That's good. That's very good. If they have anything to cycle, they take out Delver. Then again, Delver's not doing anything in our hand, so I don't think there's a reason not to play it. Our stuff's going to get smaller. At least their stuff doesn't get bigger. Mandrill still has the ability to chump. If they have 2 more cyclers, it does not. We're still not dead in that scenario, so that's good. That I like. And actually, if they swing with both, they're dead to Goyf, so also good. Usually, once Living End resolves, we don't have this much play. It's usually just Burn Spell or go home, basically. Top decking the Goyf, extraordinarily good for us. Do we block this? Well, them swinging with the Arcfiend makes me kind of want to block. Violent Outbursts could be in their hand. I think that's what we play around here. They're definitely playing 4 of them. We've only seen 1 thus far, so I think I chump here. If they have Violent Outburst, we're just dead if we don't block. So I believe I'd like to block. Don't really want to die to a card they have 4 of. That seems less than ideal. Well, we're going to our turn. What do we got? It's a Stubborn Denial. That's quite bad. So we're dead to this. It flies. We have to hope that they don't have Beast Within. I'm almost certain they have Beast Within, given that they attacked with this. But we're gonna go for it. They tapped for black instead of green. Violent Outburst instead? Oh, okay. That's respectable. They're putting some stuff into play. Okay. I guess that was their out. I don't think we're actually dead here. This has to attack. Monstrous care. Oh, Violent Outburst resolved, making these slightly bigger than they otherwise would be. We've got a Denial on top. That's relevant. Wasn't relevant there because Goyf had been shrunk by counters. This isn't bad though. I mean, it's absolutely not close to great. We're going to trade Mandrills with something, chump something with Delver, go to 1. This might not be traded with, but I don't think that's an issue. How could that possibly be an issue? If the opponent has 3 creatures next turn, what do we draw that makes me care? I don't think there's anything we can draw that makes us care. If anything, we should block these, because they can theoretically get bigger if the opponent has a Cycler. We're only taking 4 off of this. If they have a Violent Outburst again, we can counter it, which works. Can I have a Burn Spell or a Snapcaster Mage or a Traverse the Ulvenwald? Please and thank you. Well, what are you gonna do? Sometimes you just don't draw the out. We're gonna go to the opponent. That was a pretty close game, I felt. How many outs were in the deck? We'd already seen 2 bolts. We took out the forked bolt, so we We had 2 Lightning Bolts, 1 Tarfire, 2 Snapcaster Mages, 2 Traverses. That's 7 outs. That's a lot. I mean, we're super dead, so... Well, GG's opponent. Sometimes that'll happen. Anyways, hopefully you all enjoyed that video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.